Good morning, Sean Campus, and welcome to our coffee hangout. Hope everybody's having a good morning and enjoying your week. All right, so today we're going to talk about how to understand your partner. So imagine if you had the ability to understand your partner, what that would bring you, how much goodness it would bring you in your relationship, but even the peace that you would have if you could just understand your partner a little bit more. And so today we want to talk about a couple of things that might block you from being able to do that. And then we're going to talk about how to actually do that. And so the first thing that's going to block you from being able to understand your partner is the idea that you actually want to understand so you can get them to behave a different way, right? So if you're trying to understand so that you can, and sometimes we use the word understand, but we're not really meaning understand. And I think that that ends up being a block because we're not aiming for the right thing. So if you want to understand so you can say, like, does it make sense or does it not make sense, then that's going to limit your ability to actually understand your partner. And so you have to switch that in your mind from I need to understand so that I can approve it to I need to understand just because I'm trying to see my partner a little bit more. And then the second thing that I think will limit you from being able to understand your partner is your partner gets confusing or becomes a lot more confusing when they are in fight or flight mode. And so behaviors that we do when we are having a hard time are different than the behaviors that we do when we're being loved. So a lot of times the thing that we're creating in certain situations are more about an anxiousness that our partners have. And so as an example, if I'm always yelling at my partner and my partner has experienced that in their life to be something that's threatening and means abandonment and means belittling or means powerlessness for them, they're reacting to that scenario. So what they really feel on the inside might be different than how they're reacting because they're reacting in a way that says, "I'm trying to save myself. I'm trying to be okay, um, and I'm trying to exist still." Right, and so that looks very different than what's actually going on the inside. Which on the inside, they're like, "I'm trying to do this relationship, but I can't get it right." And so now there's confusion going on, and you feel confused because you don't really understand how your partner is interacting. So the thing that might limit you there is the idea that you are creating a space or an interaction that is not producing or safe to be a part of, right? And it doesn't need to be yelling. So I used one end of the spectrum, but it could be that you're silent and you don't say much, right? And so because you don't say much, or again, your partner, their body could perceive, or even in their mind, they could perceive a certain way of interaction or a certain thing that doesn't feel safe for them, and then they respond to that scenario. And so you've created by accident a situation where it gets more confusing than it is easier to understand. All right. So those two things, if you can fix those things, it will help you to start shaping your ability to understand. So one is you can't get to a point where you say, look, I need to understand so I can approve it or not. That's one. And then the second thing is the environment that you're creating can't be an environment that feels unsafe, and you'll have to define that in your specific and particular circumstances of relationship. All right, so those are two things that might be blocking you. You got to get those out of the way. Then from those, as we discuss those, you could probably tease out a little bit of, okay, so then how do I start to actually get to understanding? Well, the first thing you need to realize in order for you to understand is that interpretation is a big barrier to understanding. And so you have to see situations as they are, not as you think they are. And so that helps with our understanding because if I interpret it with my eyes and the way that I know things, then I'm missing the possibility of what my partner is actually going through, right? So my eyes might say to me, like, oh, silence, that means you don't care about me, right? But For them, they might think silence, well, I'm being protective of our relationship and I don't want to say something that's going to hurt us because I care about you. And those are two very different interpretations. And so getting to understand means that we have to put away our first thoughts about what a situation might be. We don't need to make a summation about what's going to happen or what it is. And instead, being willing to listen and hear more about what's actually going on the inside to the best of their ability from our partner, right? And so if we're willing to do that, then we can move on to the next one, which the next one is create scenarios where you're asking questions that actually are about you coming to be closer and serve and build the relationship. And so if I ask questions that say something like, well, why did you do that? Right. And you could have the best intention that it's just you're asking, well, why do you do that? And why is kind of like a judgment word, not kind of like it is a judgment word. It most of the time when somebody says, why did you do that? They kind of have already an answer for you that you probably shouldn't have done what you did. And so it might be just semantics, but it's useful for you to say out loud, hey, I don't have a a better way of what you did. I just want to understand more of what was going on for you. And I don't even want to correct it. I just want to be closer to you and I want to know more. And so I'm curious about what you're experiencing in this moment, right? And what you're experiencing in this moment helps us to ask a question that maybe we were even meaning, but it takes off the judgment possibility. What were you experiencing in this moment? What was going on for you, right? Those questions start to change the corner on what would otherwise feel like judgment and make somebody hesitant, but it also opens your eyes to understanding more. So when we ask why questions, our body already knows a why question. A lot of times it's a judgment, like, why'd you do that? You shouldn't have probably did it. And maybe if I'm asking and trying not to be judgmental, I might still say, why'd you do that? And I still have that sense that there's a judgment. So I get to open my mind a little bit more if I'm trying to understand what you were experiencing in a moment. So I really want to know what you were experiencing in the moment. What was it feeling like for you? Like, what were you thinking? What was happening for you? And that opens your ability to understand someone else because you're asking in a way that will give you an answer that will help you to understand them. Okay. And then the last thing that you need to be able to do to understand your partner is you need to spend some time in studying and understanding how people are in general, right? And so we think that we know how people are based on what we watch on social media or based on what we've experienced in our life. But you met somebody who's probably a compliment to you, which means that they're not going to actually be what you've always known in your life, which a lot of times that's a good thing. We need somebody to influence and bring in some other goodness that has nothing to do with what we do know. And so instead of trying to make them fit into what we've already had in our life, really being able to be okay with the idea that they might be different. They might be a different kind of person. And so I need to be willing to really understand and not lock into how somebody would be or how they're going to be based on what I've known in my life. So if you were to review everything that we just went over right now, what you're going to see in there is that so much of that information is about two things. One is you shifting your mind over to having an open mind and being willing to listen. But then also, it's about you being willing to say, my goal is to do understanding instead of do changing, right? So if I can shift that over, my mindset will help take me to a place where it allows me to do the actions of being able to be more inquisitive and have conversations that make me a safe place to be and give me a chance to really understand what my partner is going through. Okay. Don't try to use your partner's explanation of behaviors to tell them why they're wrong or to help them to move differently or to understand what the next move that you're going to do, because often that just takes us back to that hard place of, I don't even want to share because you're going to take the understanding that I give you and try to go use it to battle against me, right? And so we end up creating that unsafe place. And so a lot of the understanding that you're going to have to do is going to come out of you being able to shift your mind and then create an environment that's going to be useful for that situation. All right, you guys, I hope you enjoy your day and we'll talk to you soon.